mental fitness. What he's doing now.
Patriots fill stadiums, not circles in an empty room. Twitter and the FBI, one day won't deny. Trump won and you know it. Trump won and you know it. The fake news will never show it, 'cause it's true. Trump won and you know it. The thing about truth, time is always gonna tell.
Votes in Fulton County were counted more than once.
I bet he took New York and carried California as well. He's done it twice before, and he's gonna win again for the third time in 2024. Trump won and you know it. Trump won and you know it. Fox News won't even show it. It's true. Trump won and you know it. Trump won and you know it. If there's a line, they're gonna tow it. It's true. Trump won and you know it. I know it, you know it, we know it, they know it. Everybody knows Trump won. I know it, you know it, we know it, they know it. Everybody knows Trump won. I know it, you know it, we know it, they know it. Everybody knows Trump won.
God damn it. I always have the best intros when I'm muted. So I thought that was an appropriate song because all we're going to learn about over the next 8.5 hours is how this is still Trump's fault and Trump's going to finish January 6th and Trump. So this is the Biden impeachment inquiry. And we are going to go over debate on the floor for the authorization of the impeachment. Hey, what's up, Stingy? Members for 6 months. Thanks, buddy. What's another name for finishing your lady loading the dishwasher? Hate on me. It's funny. More money to the meeting, Goblin. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. So we're about to hear. We're going to break it up into two sittings. One, due to time constraints. Two, due to the fact that nobody can endure 8.5 hours, 9 hours of this nonstop all the way through. So again, this is the authorization, just the vote. This is not the impeachment vote. This is the authorization of the full House for articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. So they're going to start investigating things of that nature. So we watched last night the Rules Committee, setting up the bill to come to the floor for a vote. I still haven't seen any hearing dates or anything like that with the impeachment, but I will be covering it in full every time that they have anything public hearing wise. But yeah, for now, I think that it's a pretty good indication that it will be after the holiday. since they are leaving the Hill today and will not return until after the first of the year. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So,
shaping not just skilled players, but also well-rounded student athletes. On behalf of all the people of Pennsylvania's 13th Congressional District, I congratulate Juniata College Eagles under the leadership of President Jim Troja and wish them every continued success in the years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, we know that oil and water don't mix, but right now there is a dirty oil pipeline called Line 5 running through the most critical part of the Great Lakes, operated by a company called Enbridge, with a disturbing history of faulty infrastructure and environmental destruction. A Line 5 spill would be catastrophic for the Great Lakes region and the entire country. The Great Lakes hold 20% of the world's fresh surface water, is home, as we all know, to the precious ecosystems and wildlife, and tens of millions of people rely on them for water, jobs, recreation. We cannot allow the water we rely on to live, the water that helps make Michigan such a special place for so many, to be sacrificed for corporate greed. The good news is that President Biden could end this threat today by revoking Line 5's presidential permit and committing to the truth that water is life, that it is critical to protect. I call upon Biden administration to stand with the people of the Great Lakes and shut down Line 5 once and for all. Today, big banks bring in billions in profits while our financial systems promote inequality and instability for many of our families. Right now, millions of people, majority being people of color, lack access to checking or savings accounts. But an alternative does exist. We can build a democratic financial system that puts the livelihoods of our residents above private profit and greed. Instead of serving Wall Street, public and postal banks can ensure that.
So we're gonna skip people talking about shit that doesn't matter, and then we're gonna go. Because they got to talk about whatever the hell they wanted for. So this should be where, well, that helps. This should be where they pick it up.
The chair lays before the House the following enrolled bills.
Hey, Dog Mama. What's up, Stingy? Bad Dazza. Hello, sir.
Senate
I'm not Obama.
2747, an act to amend the Federal Elections Campaign Act of 1971 to extend the administrative fine program for certain reporting violations.
For what purpose does a gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 918 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 918, resolved that the Committees on Oversight and Accountability, Ways and Means, and the Judiciary are directed to continue their ongoing investigations as part of the House of Representatives' inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Joseph Biden, President of the United States, including as set forth in the memorandum issued by the chairs of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Ways and Means, and Judiciary of the House of Representatives entitled Impeachment Inquiry, dated September 27, 2023. Section 2, Investigative Proceedings by the Committee on Oversight and Accountability. For the purpose of continuing the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability is authorized to conduct proceedings pursuant to this resolution as follows. 1. The chair of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability may designate an open hearing or hearings pursuant to this section. 2. Notwithstanding Clause 2J, 2 of Rule 11 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, upon recognition by the chair for such purpose under this paragraph during any hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1, the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability shall be permitted to question witnesses for equal specified periods of longer than 5 minutes as determined by the chair. The time available for each period of questioning under this paragraph shall be equal for the chair and ranking minority member. The chair may confer recognition for multiple periods of such questioning, but each period of questioning shall not exceed 90 minutes in the aggregate. Only the chair and ranking minority member or employee of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, if yielded by the chair or ranking minority member, may question witnesses during such periods of questioning. At the conclusion of questioning pursuant to this paragraph, the committee shall proceed with questioning under the 5-minute rule pursuant to Clause 2J, 2A of Rule 11. 3, to allow for full evaluation of minority witness requests, the ranking minority member
Money
may
and Brave.
submit to the chair in writing any request for witness testimony relevant to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution within 72 hours after notice is given for the first hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1. Any such request shall be accompanied by a detailed written justification of the relevance of the testimony of each requested witness to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution. 4A, the ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability is authorized with the concurrence of the chair of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability to require as deemed necessary to the investigation, I, by subpoena or otherwise, 1, the attendance and testimony of any person, including at taking of deposition, and 2, the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents, and I, by interrogatory, the furnishing of information. B, in the case that the chair declines to concur in the proposed action of the ranking minority member pursuant to subparagraph A, the ranking minority member shall have the right to refer to the committee for decision the question whether such authority shall be so exercised, and the chair shall convene the committee promptly to render that decision, subject to the notice procedures for committee meetings under Clause 2G, 3A, and B of Rule 11. C, subpoenas and interrogatories so authorized may be signed by the ranking minority member and may be served by any person designated by the ranking minority member. 5, the chair is authorized to make publicly available in electronic form the transcripts of depositions conducted by the Committee on Oversight and Accountability in furtherance of the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, with appropriate redactions for classified and other sensitive information. 6, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability may issue a report set forth in findings and any recommendations appending any information and materials the Committee on Oversight and Accountability may deem appropriate with respect to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution. The chair may transmit such reports and appendices, along with any supplemental minority, additional, or dissenting views filed pursuant to Clause 2.1 of Rule 11 to the Committee on the Judiciary and make such report publicly available in electronic form with appropriate redactions to protect classified and other sensitive information. Any report prepared under this paragraph may be prepared in consultation with the chairs of the Committee on Ways and Means and the Judiciary. Section 3, investigative proceedings by the Committee on Ways and Means. For the purpose of continuing the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, the Committee on Ways and Means is authorized to conduct proceedings pursuant to this resolution as follows. 1, the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means may designate any open hearing or hearings pursuant to this section. 2, notwithstanding Clause 2J2 of Rule 11 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, upon recognition by the chair for such purpose under this paragraph, during any hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1, the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means shall be permitted to question witnesses for equal specified periods of longer than 5 minutes, as determined by the chair. The time available for each period of questioning under this paragraph shall be equal for the chair and ranking minority member. The chair may confer recognition for multiple periods of such questioning, but each period of questioning shall not exceed 90 minutes in the aggregate. Only the chair and ranking minority member or an employee of the Committee on Ways and Means, if yielded to by the chair or ranking minority member, may question witnesses during such periods of questioning. At the conclusion of questioning pursuant to this paragraph, the committee shall proceed with questioning under the 5-minute rule pursuant to Clause 2J, 2A of Rule 11. 3, to allow for full evaluation of minority witness requests, the ranking minority member may submit to the chair in writing any request for witness testimony relevant to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution within 72 hours after notice is given for the first hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1. Any such request shall be accompanied by a detailed written justification of the relevance of the testimony of each requested witness to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution. 4A, the ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means is authorized, with the concurrence of the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, to require as deemed necessary to the investigation. I, by subpoena or otherwise. 1, the attendance and testimony of any person, including at taking of deposition. And 2, the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents. I, by interrogatory, the furnishing of information. B, in the case that the chair declines to concur in the proposed action of the ranking minority member pursuant to subparagraph A, the ranking minority member shall have the right to refer to the committee for decision the question whether such authority shall be so exercised, and the chair shall convene the committee promptly to render that decision, subject to the notice procedures for a committee meeting under Clause 2A, 2G, 3A, and B of Rule 11. C, subpoenas and interrogatories so authorized may be signed by the ranking minority member and may be served by any person designated by the ranking minority member. 5, the chair is authorized to make publicly available in electronic form the transcripts of depositions conducted by the Committee on Ways and Means and in furtherance of the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, with appropriate redactions for classified and other sensitive information. 6, the Committee on Ways and Means may issue a report setting forth its findings and any recommendations and appending any information and materials the Committee on Ways and Means may deem appropriate with respect to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution. The chair may transmit such report and appendices, along with any supplemental, minority, additional, or dissenting views filed pursuant to Clause 2.1 of Rule 11 to the Committee on the Judiciary and make such report publicly available in electronic form with appropriate redactions to protect classified and other sensitive information. Any report prepared under this paragraph may be prepared in consultation with the chairs of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability and the Judiciary. Section 4, investigative proceedings by the Committee on the Judiciary. For the purpose of continuing the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized to conduct proceedings pursuant to this resolution as follows. 1, the chair of the Committee on the Judiciary may designate an open hearing or hearings pursuant to this section. 2, notwithstanding Clause 2J, 2 of Rule 11 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, upon recognition by the chair for such purpose under this paragraph during any hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1, the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary shall be permitted to question witnesses for equal specified periods of longer than 5 minutes, as determined by the chair. The time available for each period of questioning under this paragraph shall be equal for the chair and ranking minority member. The chair may confer recognition for multiple periods of such questioning, but each period of questioning shall not exceed 90 minutes in the aggregate. Only the chair and ranking minority member, or an employee of the Committee of the Judiciary, if yielded to by the chair or ranking minority member, may question witnesses during such periods of questioning. At the conclusion of questioning pursuant to this paragraph, the committee.
Desert, 1, I'll put it to a vote. This is your guys' fault. 2, it's not every day that the President of the United States gets impeached. So, of course, shit happens on my supposed day off.
He shall proceed with the questioning under the 5-minute rule pursuant to Clause 2J, 2A of Rule 11. 3, to allow for full evaluation of minority witness requests, the ranking minority member may submit to the chair in writing any request for witness testimony relevant to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution within 72 hours after notice is given for the first hearing designated pursuant to paragraph 1. Any such request shall be accompanied by a detailed written justification of the relevance of the testimony of each requested witness to the investigation described in the first section of this resolution. 4A, the ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized, with the concurrence of the chair of the Committee on the Judiciary, to require, as deemed necessary to the investigation, I, by subpoena or otherwise, 1, the attendance and testimony of any person, including at a taking of deposition, and 2, the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents, and I, by interrogatory, the furnishing of information. B, in the case that the chair declines to concur in a proposed action of the ranking minority member pursuant to subparagraph A, the ranking minority member shall have the right to refer to the committee for decision the question whether such authority shall be so exercised, and the chair shall convene the committee promptly to render that decision, subject to the notice procedures for a committee meeting under Clause 2G, 3A, and B of Rule 11. C, subpoenas and interrogatories so authorized may be signed by the ranking minority member and may be served by any person designated by the ranking minority member. 5, the chair is authorized to make publicly available in an electronic form the transcript of depositions conducted by the Committee on the Judiciary and furtherance of the investigation described in the first section of this resolution, with appropriate redactions for classified and other sensitive information. Section 5, impeachment inquiry procedures in the Committee on the Judiciary. A, the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized to conduct proceedings relating to the impeachment inquiry described in the first section of this resolution, pursuant to the procedures submitted for printing in the congressional record by the Chair of the Committee on Rules, including such procedures as to allow for the participation of the President and his counsel. B, the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized to promulgate additional procedures as it deems necessary for the fair and efficient conduct of committee hearings held pursuant to this resolution, provided that the additional procedures are not inconsistent with the procedures referenced in subsection A, the rules of the committee and the rules of the House. C1, the ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized with the concurrence of the Chair of the Committee on the Judiciary to require as deemed necessary to the investigation, A, by subpoena or otherwise, I, the attendance and testimony of any person, including at a taking of deposition, and double I, the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents, and B, by interrogatory, the furnishing of information. 2, in the case that the chair declines to concur in a proposed action of the ranking minority member pursuant to paragraph 1, the ranking minority member shall have the right to refer to the committee for decision the question whether such authority shall be so exercised, and the chair shall convene the committee promptly to render that decision, subject to the notice procedures of the committee meeting under clause 2G, 3A, and B of Rule 11. 3, subpoenas and interrogatories so authorized may be signed by the ranking minority member and may be served by any person designated by the ranking minority member. D, the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized to report to the House of Representatives resolutions, articles of impeachment, or other recommendations. Section 6, adoption of House Resolution 917. House Resolution 917 is hereby adopted.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my good friend, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During the course of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. I ask unanimous consent that members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on House Resolution 918.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today is a sad day for myself, for the institution, and most of all for the American people. My duty today is one I do not relish, and I am sure that every other member of this institution feels the same way. Yesterday, the Rules Committee met and reported out a measure under our original jurisdiction. House Resolution 918 formalizes an inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach the President of the United States. 3 months ago, at the direction of then Speaker Kevin McCarthy, 3 committees, those of Oversight and Accountability, Ways and Means, and the Judiciary, began this impeachment inquiry. Over the succeeding months, the committees have done their work and have done it well. But the inquiry is now at an inflection point. The 3 committees are nearing the end of their investigations, and the White House has chosen this moment to stonewall and resist the legitimate investigative powers of the House. Mr. Speaker, while I do not believe the House must hold a vote on the floor to initiate an impeachment inquiry, doing so may be said to be best practice. And so we are taking up today's resolution, which will formalize all impeachment inquiry that has already begun. This will ensure not only that the inquiry has the full authority of the House, but also that the House can enforce its subpoenas and ensure that the Biden administration can no longer refuse to cooperate with the investigation. I'll briefly describe the procedures for this inquiry. The resolution tasks 3 committees, Oversight and Accountability, Ways and Means, and the Judiciary, with continuing their current inquiries. It establishes procedures for conducting hearings and calling and questioning witnesses. It grants the minority equal time to question witnesses and the right to request their own witnesses. At the conclusion of their proceedings, it provides for the committees on oversight and accountability and ways and means to transmit their findings and supporting documents to the Committee on the Judiciary, which is the committee that traditionally considers impeachment matters. It gives the president the right to participate in the proceedings before the Committee on the Judiciary. Finally, the resolution authorizes the Judiciary Committee to transmit to the House resolutions, articles of impeachment, or other recommendations. The procedures we're adopting today closely parallel those the Democrats created in 2019, was our guide. After all, those procedures are now a precedent of the House. Mr. Speaker, impeachment, especially impeachment of a president, is a starkly serious matter. It is something that no member of the House should want to do, but the House has rights and obligations under the Constitution. We are charged with providing the oversight of the executive branch, and we are the sole institution in the country granted the awesome power of impeachment. It is a power that must be used selectively and wisely, and only after full deliberations. With today's resolution, we're ensuring that the House will be able to complete its inquiry. We will secure the evidence we need and uncover the facts we need to make the full and fair determination. And only at the end of the road can we make a decision on how to proceed. I take no joy in today's resolution, but I know the House will do its duty. We owe our committees, the institution, and the Constitution no less. I urge all members to support the resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we are here for one reason and one reason alone. Donald Trump demanded that Republicans impeach, so they are going to impeach.
Drink, stingy.
These guys, these Republicans, they don't work for you, the American people. They work for Donald Trump. He says jump, they respond how high. This whole thing is an extreme political stunt. It has no credibility, no legitimacy, and no integrity. It is a sideshow, a distraction from the fact that Republicans have done nothing. They have the wrong priorities. The American people think they are failing miserably, and Republicans need a diversion. So they are weaponizing and abusing impeachment, one of the most somber and serious things that Congress can do to attack President Joe Biden. I get it. They're upset Donald Trump lost. Some of them still don't believe he lost. Many of them are upset that his violent insurrection did not succeed on January 6th. And today they want to finish the job. This is a continuation of their crusade to overturn the election. They have spent a year dredging up every conspiracy you can imagine against Joe Biden. And still, their own investigation, their own members, their own witnesses, their own internal documents all say President Joe Biden is a man of integrity who follows the law. Every single one of their crazy claims has been exhaustively debunked. Yet here we are. The only thing they've uncovered is that Joe Biden is a good dad, that he loves his family. His son Hunter lost his mom and sister in a terrible car accident, lost his brother to cancer. He experienced a lot of trauma, and sadly, he got caught up with drugs. And Republicans are weaponizing this addiction and using it to attack President Biden, a man of decency and integrity. Frankly, it's one of, if not the most despicable things I've seen in my whole career here in Congress. You know, Republicans talk about an open and transparent process. Give me a break. Yesterday, Rules Committee Republicans blocked Democrats from adding the words open and transparent to this resolution. They voted against requiring a single open hearing. They didn't even put our amendment in the official committee report. I've never seen anything like that. They're so afraid of openness and transparency that they are literally trying to hide our amendments from the public record. They don't want an open and transparent process. They're allergic to transparency. They want no transparency so they can go on Fox News, distort the facts, and keep this whole ridiculous charade going. Their whole investigation is built on lies. It's an extreme political stunt designed to distract from how incompetent Republicans are and how obsessed they are with Donald Trump, a twice impeached ex-president
Really?
who's been
You're the
indicted more
asshole bringing
times
him up.
that he's been elected. How pathetic. With that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Oversight, Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to support House Resolution 918. Joe Biden has repeatedly lied to the American people about his family's corrupt influence peddling schemes. He told the American people he never spoke to his son about his family's business dealings. He claimed there was an absolute wall between his official government duties as vice president and his family. He said his family never made money from China. All of these are blatant lies. Our investigation has revealed how Joe Biden knew of, participated in, and benefited from his family cashing in on the Biden name around the world. Since January, we have learned some of the following. The Bidens created 20 shell companies, most of which were created while Joe Biden was vice president. The Bidens and their associates then raked in over $24 million through these shell companies from China, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Romania between 2014 and 2019. At least 10 members of the Biden family have benefited or participated in these schemes. The Bidens layered these payments through their bank accounts to hide the sources of the money. The banks even flagged many of these transactions in more than 150 suspicious activity reports to the Treasury Department. One bank investigator was so concerned about Hunter Biden's financial transactions with a Chinese company that he wanted to reevaluate the bank's relationship with him. He noted that his transactions served, and I quote, no current business.
Bro, we get it, Scoot. You're a groomer. Like, don't fucking do that. We don't care that you're gay. Stop spamming shit. Like, if I came into a random chat and started talking about how I wasn't a groomer, everybody there thinks you're a groomer. I'm just letting you know, brother. Just letting you know.
Business purpose, end quote. That's what I call a shell company. According to Devin Archer, a Biden family associate, Joe Biden was the brand of the business. The brand showed up. Joe Biden spoke to his son's associates by speakerphone over 20 times, dined with foreign oligarchs and a Burisma executive, and had coffee with his son's Chinese associate, all when he was vice president. Weeks after Joe Biden left the vice presidency, money from this Chinese Communist Party-linked entity began to make its way to the bank accounts of several Biden family members. Based on one Biden associate's interview with the FBI, these payments were sent to the Bidens as a, quote, thank you. Ask any Justice Department public corruption investigator about the importance of payments received after one leaves public office. It's a hallmark of corruption. We are now at a pivotal moment in our investigation. We will soon depose and interview several members of the Biden family and their associates about these influence peddling schemes. But we are facing obstruction from the White House. The White House is seeking to block key testimony from current and former White House staff. It's also withholding thousands of records from Joe Biden's time as vice president.
Gentleman's time has
President
expired.
Biden must be held accountable for his lies, corruption, and obstruction. I urge my colleagues to support this important and necessary resolution. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, well, Mr. Speaker, I need a map to get out of the rabbit hole that Mr. Comer just took us down. But if you want to know what an impeachable offense looks like, here it is. When that man, wannabe dictator, told that angry, violent mob to attack this Capitol building where we all are right now to overturn a free and fair election. This is what a smoking gun looks like. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Mr. Raskin.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker,
You know, the reason mysteries are called whodunits is because they start with a crime and then you have to try to figure out who did it. The Biden impeachment investigation isn't a whodunit. It's a what is it? It's like an Agatha Christie novel where the mystery is what's the crime? And that gets very tedious very fast. After 11 months of this, no one can tell us what President Biden's crime was, much less where it happened, when it happened, what the motive was, who the perpetrators were, or who the victims were. Maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen in Congress was yesterday in the Rules Committee when Congressman Neguse kept asking Congressman Reschenthaler what the crime was, and Reschenthaler, who's not on the Oversight Committee and is apparently just waking up to the joke, kept saying he didn't know what it was, but that's why we need an impeachment investigation to find out. And Neguse kept asking him, but what will the impeachment investigation be looking for? And finally, Reschenthaler said, a high crime or misdemeanor, and Neguse said, yes, but which one? Now, Neguse, of course, was involved in a real impeachment investigation of a real presidential offense, the incitement of a violent political insurrection against this Congress, against the Vice President of the United States, against the Constitution, and against the election of 2020. We did not need Sherlock Holmes and a magnifying glass to find the presidential crime with Donald Trump. It came right into this House and smashed us in the face. Now, it's true Chairman Comer has collected a mountain of evidence over the last 11 months, tens of thousands of pages of documents, dozens of hours of interviews with government officials, but all of it clearly shows that Joe Biden committed no crime. Even their own witnesses that they called to the only public hearing they had said there is not remotely enough evidence to justify impeachment. Chairman Comer has bragged on Fox News about procuring 100% compliance with his subpoenas. So forget about obstruction, which I hear them muttering about today. Mr. Speaker, I played a game with the little kids in our family at Thanksgiving. I asked them whether they'd seen my hen weigh. And when they said, what's a hen weigh? I said 4 or 5 pounds. It's a dad joke, and some of the bigger kids got it. But when I asked the little kids, like 3 or 4, if they'd seen my hen weigh, they said, what's a hen weigh? And I said 3 or 4 pounds, and they started looking for it. And when the other kids came along and asked what they were doing, they said, we're looking for Uncle Jamie's hen weigh. And then for hours, they were looking everywhere for my hen weigh, under the sofa and under the chairs. And it could go on for days like that. Mr. Speaker, we're all looking for the Republican Party's hen weigh. It just weighs 3 or 4 pounds, but it's costing us tens of millions of dollars. So please forgive me for spoiling the party here, but I want to say this to America. There is no hen weigh, and this stupid, blundering investigation is keeping us from getting any real work done for the people of America. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my good friend, the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan of Ohio.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a story as old as the hills. You got a politician who does certain things. Those actions then benefit his family financially, and then there's an effort to conceal it and sweep it under the rug. The best example is to go back to the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. 4 key facts about Hunter Biden's involvement with this company and Joe Biden's involvement. First, Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma. Second, he's not qualified to be on the board of Burisma. Don't take my word for it. He said it himself. Third, he's asked by the executives of Burisma, can you weigh in with Washington, with D.C. to help alleviate the pressure we are under? 3 days later, the Vice President of the United States, now President Joe Biden, goes to Ukraine and conditions American tax dollars for Ukraine on the firing of the prosecutor who was applying the pressure to the company Hunter Biden was on the board of. That's why we're going with an official impeachment inquiry vote today. That's why this needs to be investigated. There are 2 resolutions we're considering. Resolution 918 and Resolution 917 incorporated if we pass 918. 3 names mentioned in those 2 resolutions. One name, of course, is Joe Biden, President of the United States. But the other 2 names in Resolution 917 are 2 DOJ tax lawyers, Mark Daley and Jack Morgan. 2 guys we want to talk to that the Biden Justice Department says we're not going to let you talk to them. With this vote, we think we get to talk to those individuals. And here's why it's important. These guys, these 2 individuals initially said there should be felony tax charges for 2014, 2015 in the Hunter Biden investigation. And that's important because those are the years when the bulk of the income from Burisma came to Hunter Biden. They initially said there should be felony tax charges for those years. Then they changed their position. 8 months later, they changed their position. We want to know why. Why did you do that? Why did you let the statute of limitations intentionally let the statute of limitations lapse for those years? My theory is it's one thing to charge Hunter Biden on a gun charge in Delaware. It's another thing to say we're not going to charge, another thing to charge him on Burisma tax years, because that gets you to Joe Biden. That gets you to the White House. That's why we need this vote. The impeachment power, as the chairman said, is a power that solely resides in the House. When you have a majority of the House of Representatives go on record, that sends a message. We think we get timely participation from the witnesses we need to talk to and the documents Mr. Comer has been seeking. Finally, I would say this about this changing story from the White House, this changing story from the Justice Department. Today, Hunter Biden did a press conference. He was supposed to be in a deposition. He did a press conference. And at that press conference, he said, my father was not financially involved in the business. Well, that's an important qualifier. We haven't heard that. For 3 years, we haven't heard that. All we've heard is Joe Biden had no involvement. Now his son does a press conference when he's supposed to be being deposed and says he wasn't financially involved. Well, what involvement was it? We know there was phone calls, dinners, and meetings. What involvement was it? That's why we want to ask these questions with important witnesses. That's why this resolution is important. I urge a yes vote. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I need to get a decoder ring. I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman.
Used
from
that
Mexico,
same joke last night. Shut
Ms.
up.
Ledger Fernandez.
Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, every conspiracy theory we just heard has been
not this
debunked,
one.
not true, and distorted from the facts. Because
Not
this
this one.
impeachment inquiry is political vengeance directed by a twice impeached, 4 times indicted president and carried out by extreme MAGA Republicans. Republicans rejected my amendment to require the committees to hold at least one public hearing. Why? Because 11 months and a mountain of evidence and documents gathered so far proves that President Biden respected the rule of law and fought corruption. Republicans want to continue a secret investigation so they can distort the facts. For example, Republicans tried to create a scandal about the $4,140 Hunter paid to his dad in 2018. What really happened? Joe Biden paid his son's truck payments while Hunter struggled with addiction. Hunter paid his dad back. A parent's love is never without pain. A parent doesn't stop loving a child struggling with addiction. Americans will see in those truck payments some of their own attempts to help their struggling kids. Shame on my colleagues for politicizing a parent's pain. Americans know what evidence of an impeachment looks like. The Capitol Police, who were battered and beaten as Trump tried to overturn an election, know what an impeachable offense feels like. This puppet show is more of the same attack on our democracy that we saw here.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished lady from Indiana, Ms. Houchin, also a distinguished member of the Rules Committee.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, today, on the very day Hunter Biden ignored a subpoena from this body, we will vote to take the next critical step in formalizing the House's impeachment inquiry into President Biden. For months, the White House and Hunter Biden have been stonewalling our investigation, trying to hide the truth. And this stonewalling is what's caused us to be here today. Like Chairman Cole said yesterday, it's deeply sad. It's a sad day, not something any of us want to be doing on this House floor, but it has become necessary. Following today's floor vote on HRES 918, the committees on oversight, accountability, ways and means, and judiciary will have greater legal position and subpoena power to fully investigate allegations of influence peddling and wrongdoing by President Biden, his family, and his associates. The American people deserve transparency and accountability. They deserve the truth. And that's exactly what they're going to get from this Republican House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I should remind the gentleman that Hunter Biden was here today. He wants to testify in public. But Republicans said no because they want to do it behind closed doors so they can go on Fox News and cherry pick facts and figures and distort the truth. Mr. Speaker, Republicans aren't interested in transparency in this investigation. And apparently the Rules Committee isn't either. In our markup yesterday, Democrats offered 9 amendments. They were all voted down by Republicans. But in the official Rules Committee report, contrary to years of committee practice and tradition, the majority left out descriptions of those amendments. So instead of reading, for example, the Republicans defeated an amendment to add, quote, open and transparent to investigative proceedings, members of the public will only see that Republicans voted down, quote, amendment number 4. Instead of defeating an amendment requiring committees to hold an open hearing as part of the investigation, the record will show that the majority simply voted down, quote, amendment number 5. Republicans are literally hiding Democratic amendments about transparency. You cannot make this stuff up. And this is especially shocking to me because it is so aligned with the way this committee has run historically under this chairman.
The minority leader of the
and I hope that this
Rules Committee
isn't an
that brought the
indication of
resolution.
how the majority intends to operate in the future. So to make sure that these amendments show up somewhere in the
Apparently.
historical record, I'm going to put the summaries in the congressional record. And I ask unanimous consent to insert for the record the summaries of our 9 amendments, which Republicans intentionally left out of the Rules Committee report.
Without objection. Gentleman reserves.
I reserve, yeah.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just quickly, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Just for the record, all these amendments are on the website of the Rules Committee. It's not like they're mysteriously hidden someplace. They're in plain view on the website of the Rules Committee. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to my good friend, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, also a distinguished member of the Rules Committee.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Speaker. I rise today in full support of this impeachment inquiry. I hope all the public tunes in to the Rules Committee yesterday. My question, what are you scared of? What are you scared of? What facts do you not want to come out? That was so evident. You spent more time quoting Donald Trump, the January 6th thing, but the facts about what Hunter Biden and his family did. The checks don't make themselves up that are written to this family. The LLC accounts don't make themselves up. It's facts. And what more to come out that you're hiding is so evident. This resolution follows the bar set by Democrats during the impeachment proceedings in 2019. We're playing by the same rules the Democrats set. If Democrats thought this process was fair for President Trump, they should think it's fair for President Biden. And no, the Bidens are the evidence, I think, as things come out, will finally show what the trail is and the fact that there are consequences. You cannot just not say you're innocent and not have to prove it. So I fully support this inquiry, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, and Mr. Speaker, members should be advised that Joe Biden, not Hunter Biden, is President of the United States. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on the Judiciary, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New York is
shit,
recognized for
not
2
Jerry.
minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we all know why we're here today. The majority has no accomplishments to speak of. Their own members have said so, and the right wing is getting restless. So since they can't legislate and run on anything positive, they've decided to tear down President Biden instead. They have no evidence, of course, to support this inquiry, but since this majority never lets facts get in the way of a good set of Fox News talking points, here we are. Dozens of witnesses have sat for transcribed interviews, and every one of those witnesses tells us the same thing. There was no political interference in the Hunter Biden case. Nobody at the Department of Justice ever blocked the special counsel from bringing charges. Unfortunately, the American public does not have most of this story because Chairman Jordan refuses to release the transcripts from our interviews. In fact, of the 85 interviews our committee has conducted so far, he has released exactly 1 transcript. He knows that if he releases any more than that, his preferred narrative will crumble. The evidence simply does not support these baseless charges. So why is the MAGA wing of the Republican Party resorting to this political stunt? 2 words: Donald Trump. The likely nominee of the Republican Party, who faces 91 criminal charges in various courts, was also impeached not once but twice, and we had evidence. And whenever the former president is accused of wrongdoing, his favorite move is to accuse his opponent of doing the same. For this to work, of course, he needs President Biden to be impeached too. And so he asked his enablers in Congress to invent an impeachment, even if there's not a shred of evidence to back it up. And even if everything Chairman Comer said were true, which none of it is, an impeachable offense committed by Vice President Biden would not be under our Constitution grounds for impeaching President Biden. This is political hackery, not serious work. We should be focused on doing the work of the American people and not be distracted by pernicious nonsense. I urge all members to vote no on this ridiculous resolution. Now I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my good friend, distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, also a member of the Rules Committee.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank the Speaker. I thank the Chairman. This is an impeachment inquiry defined as an act of asking for information. Nothing more, nothing less. The inquiry is to further investigate at least 3 things. 1, the extent to which Joe Biden, as vice president, was involved with the flow of millions of dollars from foreign companies and interests in China and Ukraine into the Biden family, into numerous shell companies, including Hunter and his involvement. Devin Archer testified the vice president was, in fact, at Hunter's business meetings, and there are numerous emails and other evidence indicating that the big guy or dad was involved. 2, the extent to which Joe Biden has lied to the extent of his involvement. Involvement that Hunter all but acknowledged today when avoiding his deposition in a show press conference on the Capitol steps by carefully saying his dad was not involved financially in his businesses. 3, the extent to which Biden and his administration have obstructed justice by preventing Jack Morgan and Mark Daley with the Department of Justice from testifying to their involvement in DOJ and IRS deciding to slow walk 2014 tax charges and 2015 charges so the statute of limitations would lapse. All the more interesting in light of Hunter Biden being indicted just last week on 9 counts of tax offenses for failing to pay $1.4 million in back taxes after writing off hookers and sex clubs. All of which was only brought to light because a judge called the bluff of Weiss's sweetheart deal. By only providing 14 of 82,000 emails with pseudonyms, of which 29,000 were tied to Biden's family businesses. 3rd, by limiting the scope of witness testimony from Department of Justice witnesses over and over and over again. This is an impeachment inquiry. That's all. What are my Democratic colleagues afraid of if there's nothing to see there? Maybe that is all the more reason for the inquiry. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I could have never seen that in my life and been happy.
The distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Ways and Means, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
I rise in shock and frustration at our Republican colleagues' do-nothing Congress. Seinfeld would have called this the impeachment about nothing. They are leading the most unproductive session since the Great Depression, and after manufacturing crisis after crisis, weeks of trying to choose a speaker, and putting their record-breaking economic recovery, which is non-existent, under the spotlight, they think that formalizing a fishing expedition will dress it up enough for the American people to believe it. This is not the work of the Ways and Means Committee. The greatness of this committee has nothing to do with an impeachment proceeding, and how the Ways and Means Committee got involved in this baffles Republican and Democratic members of the committee. The truth is, it's been nearly a year and not a shred of evidence has shown any wrongdoing or interference by Joe Biden. Their recycled conspiracy theories continue to be debunked. They continue to mistake Congress, a legislative body, for a law enforcement body. In their only public hearing, their own witnesses conceded that there isn't evidence to warrant moving forward, which I have submitted to the record, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman from South Carolina said we're trying to hide something. I moved in the Ways and Means Committee to have the whistleblower's testimony done in full public for observation. They turned it down. Meanwhile, we're staring at another Republican government shutdown at the beginning of tax filing season. Enough with this obsession with one person, Joe Biden. The Ways and Means Democrats, we are concerned about all members of the American family, and for the taxpayer that is about to be impeded because of the work that's being done on impeachment instead of on tax reform, this is where we find ourselves. Nothing here, no evidence, no wrongdoing after a year, a waste of time for the American people, a waste of time for a Congress that should be addressing the real problems of the American family.
And without objection, the gentleman's request is granted. A gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you,
Somebody's
Mr. Speaker.
angry.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Cole. President Biden has hidden from the American people his knowledge of and role in his family's overseas business dealings. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence showing his knowledge and involvement, President Biden still refuses to come clean. So far, 2 key DOJ witnesses have failed to show for congressionally subpoenaed depositions after DOJ directed them not to appear. Other witnesses have refused to answer certain questions from investigators, and the Biden administration has refused to turn over many of the documents requested by Congress, claiming this inquiry was not properly authorized. Let there be no mistake. Today's vote asserts Congress's authority to conduct an impeachment inquiry and gather all the evidence to proceed with our investigation. The American people deserve answers. Here's what we know so far. The existence of multiple email aliases suggests that Joe Biden was deliberately trying to conceal his activities from the public, including one-on-one communications with a key Hunter Biden business partner during his vice presidency. We also learned that investigators were blocked from looking into potential campaign finance crimes by the Biden campaign. Hunter Biden had only known Kevin Morris, a Democrat donor, for 2 months before Morris started settling his tax debts to the tune of about $2 million, and then spent about $3 million more to cover Hunter's lifestyle. In the midst of the 2020 campaign, just weeks before Super Tuesday, primary elections that would decide the future of Joe Biden's candidacy, Morris emailed Hunter Biden's business associates, and there was, quote, considerable risk personally and politically to not filing his late taxes. But the only person who faced political risk was Joe Biden, whose campaign the whistleblowers had reason to believe Morris was speaking to. As members of Congress, we have to abide by campaign finance limits, and so must the president. Morris's millions in payments to cover Hunter Biden's taxes and other financial obligations appeared to the whistleblowers to be an illegal donation to the Biden campaign. Unfortunately, they were blocked from investigating further. Time and again, when investigators found a lead that pointed to Joe Biden, DOJ, they stepped in and prevented them from pursuing it. Just 30 seconds.
Yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for additional 30 seconds.
Thanks to the evidence released by the whistleblowers, the DOJ indicted Hunter Biden on 9 tax charges, including 3 felonies. Everything the whistleblowers told us about the Hunter Biden tax case has proven right. I'm convinced they're also right about the links to Joe Biden they were prevented from following. Congress owes it to the American people to follow the facts wherever they lead and pass this resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to insert into the record an article from Time Magazine entitled "Absolutely Shocking: Impeachment Experts Say Biden Inquiry May Be the Weakest in U.S. History." And this article quotes Philip Bobbitt, a constitutional scholar at Columbia Law, saying impeachment, quote, is supposed to be the most extreme sanction in American politics. And if you reach for it every time you think it'll help you in the polls, I fear it will become degraded, end quote. Mr. Speaker, all the gentleman just said has been, what he just said has been debunked, and it's just nuts. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
attempted to extort the
not
president
this
of
fucker.
Ukraine by withholding military aid unless Zelensky agreed to announce a sham investigation of Joe Biden. The evidence of Trump's impeachable offenses was overwhelming, and Trump was impeached. In 2020, after losing the election, Trump incited a violent insurrection against our own government. The evidence of that high crime was witnessed by everyone in this chamber. He was impeached again. And in 2023, Donald Trump is once again seeking illicit help in his campaign, this time by badgering Republicans to impeach Joe Biden. Even with no evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, Republicans are all too willing to do it. There is a through line to all of this.
Trump a third
Donald
time,
Trump
you
will
bitch.
violate the law and Constitution to gain power and to keep it. And Republicans will enable him every step of the way, no matter how destructive the consequences to our institutions or to the country. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, distinguished member from California, Mr. McClintock.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, short of declaring war, impeachment is the most serious act that Congress can take. It must be confined to the narrow grounds established by the Constitution and never used to settle political differences. But the Democrats would have us simply turn a blind eye to mounting evidence of a family influence peddling scheme that implicates the president. This we cannot do. We owe it to the country to get to the bottom of these allegations, and that requires the House to objectively invoke its full investigatory powers, respect the due process rights of all involved, and lay all of the facts before the American people. Last session, the Democrats made a mockery of impeachment, and we cannot allow them to become our teachers. Shrill voices should be kept far from this inquiry, lest they undermine its legitimacy and credibility. Congress has an obligation to approach serious accusations seriously. And with this vote, we do so. I yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I'll tell the gentleman what is a mockery. This is a mockery. And we hear the same tired old conspiracy theories being recycled over and over and over again that have all been debunked. And to further debunk them, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in staunch opposition to this resolution. The Republicans have already spent 12 months on this exact investigation. They have obtained more than 100,000 documents, pages of documents, and dozens of hours of witness testimony. But there is simply not a shred of evidence proving any wrongdoing by President Biden related to his son or otherwise. So whatever complaints that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have about how the Department of Justice investigated a private citizen, Hunter Biden,
Apparently by
you
Time
should
Magazine.
ask Donald Trump and Bill
Editorial.
Barr, who were in power at the time that this investigation was going on. So because there's no evidence, now we're going to move the goalposts, claiming an impeachment inquiry is necessary to gather more evidence. But Chairman Comer himself said earlier this year that he had received 100% compliance from the administration. And they can only cite to 2 low-level career officials at the Department of Justice who have not testified, even though their supervisors have. Just this morning, Hunter Biden showed up to the Capitol ready to provide evidence. The Republicans refused to take his testimony. So how can you sit there saying you need more evidence when you prevent the central witness in the investigation from giving you evidence? What are you afraid of? I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my good friend, distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Timmons.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Americans have lost faith in the impartiality of the Biden administration. We have ample evidence that the DOJ, FBI, and IRS have refused to do their jobs. Americans deserve to know the truth, and Congress has a duty to investigate. The question is simple. What did President Biden know about his family's criminal enterprises and when? That is the question. That is why this inquiry is necessary. We've already uncovered that the Biden family received $25 million in payouts from foreign adversaries. Their scheme was simple. Foreign client has a problem. Client pays a Biden. Vice President Biden travels to the foreign country. Vice President Biden leverages U.S. influence to force favorable outcomes for the client. The Biden family earns their fee. That's the scheme. The proof of concept was Burisma in 2014, and they replicated it again and again. If President Biden was complicit, then our national security is vulnerable. His administration keeps stonewalling while the president repeatedly lies about his involvement. As a member of the Oversight Committee, I believe the evidence we have uncovered thus far demands further investigation. This vote is the only logical next step. I urge a yes vote. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, you 1 minute. The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to oppose this perverse, illegitimate effort to do Donald Trump's political dirty work. This resolution is nothing more than an extreme political stunt built on absolutely zero evidence of wrongdoing. The one thing it does prove is that Republicans are focused on the wrong priorities. This resolution clearly has nothing to do with protecting the Constitution from high crimes and misdemeanors. How do we know? Because a year of investigation, piles of documents, and a herd of the Republicans' own witnesses confirmed there is zero evidence of wrongdoing. Instead, the Republicans' wasteful witch hunt just confirms that President Biden is a good and honorable man. What this resolution really does is cover up a full year of do-nothing Republican policies that ignored our families' needs and neglected an array of global threats to democracy. Worse, this resolution tries to obscure the corrupt and criminal acts of the former president and wannabe dictator Donald Trump. This extreme political stunt is built upon the sick, twisted extremism of House Republicans and totally unmasks their complete absence of an agenda that helps the American people. I urge a no vote on this resolution, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Fry.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of House Resolution 918. This year, House Republicans have conducted a methodical investigation into the alleged actions of the Biden family, including Joe Biden himself in his family's foreign business dealings and foreign peddling schemes. As a member of both the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, I can say that our investigation has peeled back layer upon layer of Biden family scandals and has exposed the safety nets designed to insulate the Biden family and Joe Biden from impending accountability. You know, there's an old legal saying, Mr. Speaker, that if you don't have the facts, you argue the law. If you don't have the law, you argue the facts. And if you have neither, you pound the table. What we are seeing from the other side today is that they want to talk about Donald Trump. They want to talk about January 6th. They want to talk about a perceived lack of transparency. They want to talk about how nothing is happening out in the open. Well, let me assure you that we have done this for months. We have done more in 10 months than law enforcement agencies have done in 5 years. So let's talk about the facts. $25 million have flowed to members of the Biden family, 20 corporate entities. 9 members of the Biden family have received these monies, $40,000 direct payment to Joe Biden himself, $200,000 direct payment to Joe Biden himself, allegedly under a loan. We have WhatsApp messages, pseudonyms, fake email addresses, and 22 meetings in which Joe Biden himself met with Hunter Biden and his business associates. We have been stonewalled. We've even seen this today as Hunter Biden paraded onto the Senate side and did not come to a lawfully issued subpoena deposition in front of the House Oversight Committee. Now is the time for an impeachment inquiry. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
All right, good. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the distinguished Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the MAGA majority is putting forward an impeachment inquiry, even as their own leaders admit there's no evidence of wrongdoing. They've already reviewed tens of thousands of documents, interviewed dozens of witnesses, and nothing. Why? Because this has never been about the truth. This is about avenging Donald
I think that's a
Trump.
man.
This is about undermining our democracy and influencing the 2024 election. President Ford once said, "Truth is the glue that holds government together." Mr. Speaker, it's truth that allows this chamber to function. Abandoning truth in favor of political gamesmanship creates nothing but chaos. That dysfunction isn't a byproduct of the majority's behavior, it's the point. They don't want government to function. They've sought nothing in service of the American people, nothing to lower costs, nothing to create good paying jobs, to grow the middle class, to make everyday people feel more secure. What has the majority delivered? The kind of extremism that chooses rich tax cheats over working people, that obstructs the ballot box and hikes the cost of healthcare, that protects guns over kids, that bans abortion and criminalizes doctors, that rewards polluters and corporate greed and tells everyday Americans, you foot the bill. This sham impeachment is below the dignity of the people's house. It is an affront to the people who sent us here to work for them. What a disgrace. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to my very good friend, distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donald.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the Democrat Party is telling us that they care about taxpayers, but the son of the President of the United States is a tax cheat. He ignored federal tax law on purpose. He laundered money through 20 LLCs. He concealed millions of dollars of overseas money. And the only reason he was able to accomplish these feats of getting so much money into his companies is because the president is his father. That is it. If you're asking why we are looking for an impeachment inquiry, it is because there were 170 suspicious activity reports at the Department of Treasury, which we went and looked through. And every one of those reports said very clearly that there was evidence of money laundering and potentially tax evasion. There were hours of deposition. There's a web of LLCs with company names that have no business interest whatsoever. And then we have finally uncovered one example, Mr. Speaker, $5 million from a foreign company going to a joint venture partly controlled by Hunter Biden. Next day, 400,000 goes from Hunter Biden to—
Gentleman's time has expired.
I give the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized.
400,000 goes to an account controlled by Jim and Sarah Biden. Sarah Biden writes a check to herself, and then $40,000 is in a check to Joseph Robinette Biden, the President of the United States. That's your evidence. If you want to talk crime, bribery, co-conspirator to being to FARA violations, and we can go on and on. Vote for the resolution. Congress must investigate these crimes. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, it's amazing, Mr. Speaker, a pattern is developing. If you'll notice, my Republican friends never talk about Joe Biden. It's all Hunter Biden. They seem to be obsessed with him. I don't know. They need to get some help. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
This impeachment is a continuation of the insurrection that came here on January 6th. This gang has never accepted Joe Biden as the president. And the architect of the idea that you could overturn the election is the current Speaker of the House. And then Donald Trump sent that violent mob here. It didn't work. And so now we're here, where they're going to try and use this House to overturn the election through this inquiry. The problem is they have zero evidence. The only crime is that Joe Biden blew out Donald Trump in the 2020 election. And that's a problem because this place is the largest law firm in DC with these lawyers working on behalf of just one client, Donald Trump, at the expense of everything else that matters. But I want to give James Comer some credit because after 50,000 pages of depositions and secret hearings and closed hearings, I think if we give him enough time, he's going to prove that Hunter Biden
Did she really?
is Joe Biden's son.
Yeah, we forgive you,
I yield
dude.
back.
No
Yields
worries.
back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, the Democratic leader, Mr. Jeffries.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
We're not those people, dude. We don't really care.
Mr. Speaker, I rise
We're
today
good with
in strong
everybody.
opposition to this fake, fraudulent, and
Here's Hakeem.
fictitious impeachment
Jeffries.
inquiry effort. We are here today on the House floor, wasting time and taxpayer dollars on an illegitimate impeachment inquiry because Donald Trump, the puppet master, has directed extreme MAGA Republicans to launch a political hit job against President Joe Biden. There is no evidence that President Biden has engaged in an impeachable offense. There is no evidence that President Joe Biden has engaged in wrongdoing. There is no evidence that President Biden has broken the law. We know that President Joe Biden is a good, honorable, and decent man, dedicated his life to public service, to making a difference for the American people. But the puppet master in chief, Donald Trump, has directed the sycophants to target Joe Biden as part of an effort to undermine President Biden's reelection. That's the pattern, that's the process, and it reveals that our extreme MAGA Republican colleagues have done nothing whatsoever when it comes to making a difference in the lives of everyday Americans. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we are ready, willing, and able to find common ground with our Republican colleagues in a bipartisan way on any issue. But Republicans, this do-nothing Republican Congress has chosen to do nothing to solve problems for hard-working American taxpayers. Nothing on the economy, nothing on inflation, nothing on affordability, nothing on gun safety, nothing on trying to improve the quality of life of the American people. But what we have seen from the very beginning of this do-nothing Republican Congress is chaos and dysfunction and extremism being inflicted on the American people. When it comes to this fraudulent impeachment inquiry, more than 100,000 pages of documents have been produced and reviewed. Not a scintilla of evidence exists that President Biden has broken the law. It's interesting to me. I wonder how my colleagues in New York and California, who were sent here to make life better for the American people, explain this vote, which is not designed to improve the lives of the folks that we are privileged to serve, but is a political hit job, a political stunt, political gamesmanship. The American people are tired of the partisanship, tired of the brinksmanship, tired of this effort to score political points on a partisan basis as opposed to actually making a difference. House Democrats will continue to put people over politics. We will continue to fight for lower costs, to grow the middle class, for safer communities, fight for reproductive freedom, defend democracy, and build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up as opposed to the top down. House Democrats remain committed to joining President Biden and advancing the ball for the American people, for the middle class, for low-income families, for working families, for all those folks who aspire to be a part of the middle class, for young people, for older Americans, for our veterans. We plan to continue to build upon the progress that we've made under the leadership of President Biden on behalf of the American people. And it's time for the extreme MAGA Republicans to join us or get out of the way. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This impeachment inquiry is a political stunt with zero evidence. We're here today not because of any wrongdoing by President Biden, but because Donald Trump wants revenge. Welcome to the Donald Trump Revenge Show. He's running a campaign promising to destroy democracy and the rule of law, and will soon be found guilty of serious crimes. The American people will reject this toxic and disgusting agenda. That's why Trump's allies here in Congress are trying to rescue him. They're throwing everything they can at President Biden, from misleading leaks to outright fabrications and lies. They're even trying to sell debunked Rudy Giuliani conspiracy theories. And let's be clear, the White House has provided thousands of pages of bank records, statements from personal bank accounts, and testimony from the president's family. But none of this is enough for the extreme MAGA GOP. This is all to appease the con man and the criminal, Donald Trump. But make no mistake, the American people will see through this entire impeachment sham. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Neguse.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 90 seconds.
I thank the Speaker. I thank the ranking member. Republicans have had a majority in this House for 11 months. And what do they have to show for it? Nothing. No efforts to grow the middle class, no efforts to lower costs, no efforts to build safer communities. Instead, an effort to default on our nation's debt, 2 attempts to shut down the government, vacating their own speaker, and now a baseless impeachment that they are
Here's
pursuing
jitters again.
for one reason and one reason alone, because former President Trump ordered them to do so. You ask them to articulate what crime they are investigating, they can't give you an answer. You ask them to identify any evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, crickets. Mr. Speaker, the American people, I can assure you, are deeply disappointed in the actions that House Republicans have taken for the better part of the last year. And this action is no different. I urge my colleagues, reject this farce of a process, and let's get back to doing the important work that the American people expect us to do. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to bring up H.R. 12, a bill that would ensure every American has full access to essential reproductive health care, including abortion care. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. And to discuss our proposal, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Trahan.
Without objection, gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this entire charade is ridiculous. Speaker Johnson is about to send members of Congress home for the rest of the year. And instead of lowering costs for families before the holidays or protecting women's freedom to make their own health decisions, House Republicans are taking orders from Donald Trump to force through a partisan political impeachment with no evidence, no witnesses, and no wrongdoing on behalf of the president. Meanwhile, as we speak, Kate Cox, a pregnant woman from Texas, is being forced to flee her home as Republican leaders try to force her to carry her baby to term, who was diagnosed with a terrible condition that would result in miscarriage, stillbirth, or death soon after birth. We could have come to the floor today to pass legislation like the Women's Health Protection Act to protect women like Kate Cox and to prevent that kind of physical harm and trauma from being inflicted on women living under Republican abortion bans. But House Republicans choose impeachment. The American people won't forget. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Can I inquire how much time is left?
Gentleman has 3 3/4 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Oklahoma has 6 3/4 minutes.
Does the gentleman have any other speakers or? Okay, all right. I'm happy to yield now 1 minute to the gentleman from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Extreme MAGA Republicans in the House are on a Donald Trump-directed fishing expedition. In fact, they've been on a fishing expedition for months with embarrassing results. Nothing. No bites, no evidence for anything that justifies impeachment. There are no fish to catch in this Republican swamp. And good luck to all these Republicans who have to go home and justify a sham impeachment to their districts while telling them that we haven't passed the budget. We haven't reauthorized the farm bill. We haven't done a single thing that helps Americans live their lives. Instead, we're wasting time on bogus censure resolutions and bogus impeachment inquiries. We have 1.5 legislative business days left in the year. We should be passing bills to help working families, but that is not what we do under extreme Republicans' control. Vote no on this new fishing expedition. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, Republicans are saying the quiet part out loud, and I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a Rolling Stone article from today entitled GOP Rep Explains Impeachment Push, Donald J. Trump 2024 Baby. I reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Now we have an article from the Rolling Stone.
Thank you, Mr.
in the
Speaker.
Congressional
Mr.
Record.
Speaker, I
What a
yield 3
fucking
minutes to
joke.
my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from North Dakota, also the sponsor of the resolution.
Gentleman from North Dakota is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here's what we know. We know that the President Biden's transition team ran interference for Hunter Biden and obstructed law enforcement's attempts to interview the president's son. We know that somebody in the FBI decided not to investigate bribery allegations against Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, provided by a confidential informant. That source is so important that the FBI has deemed him so credible that they opposed the release of the report and only agreed for a review in a classified setting. We know that the IRS investigators were not allowed to follow leads that had the potential to implicate President Biden in Hunter Biden's alleged financial crimes. We know that recommendations for prosecution of Hunter Biden were denied or delayed until the statute of limitations had run. We know that a plea deal was offered to Hunter Biden by the DOJ that offered him global immunity for crimes outside the scope of the charged conduct, and that plea deal only fell apart after whistleblowers came forward to Congress. Set aside for a minute the $24 million, the 20-plus shell companies, the payments to President Biden, and the changing narrative from this White House every time a new bad fact comes to light. Set that aside. These instances alone should concern all Americans, because it appears that people in the highest echelons of our government were running interference for the president's sons. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have an innocent explanation for every single incident. The problem is, it's very difficult to see an innocent explanation for all of the incidents. The FBI, the DOJ, the IRS, and the president's political operation have all frustrated attempts to investigate the Bidens. Obstruction is a crime. And it's no less of a crime if it's being used within the highest powers of government to perpetrate that coercion. Take all of the politics out of this. There is no investigator in any jurisdiction in the world that would not continue to investigate this investigation with these facts. The purpose of the impeachment inquiry is for the House to authorize impeachment and strengthen its ability to compel testimony and document production response to congressional subpoenas. This will allow the House to continue its investigation into whether President Biden changed U.S. policy due to payments received by the Biden family members from hostile foreign powers, or whether he knowingly allowed foreign powers to believe that the payments were being made and to employ the Biden family members would result in access and the ability to alter U.S. policy, or whether the president and the president's administration were using government agencies to obstruct investigations into Hunter and Joe Biden. This inquiry is warranted. It will put the House of Representatives in the best legal position possible to uncover the facts, and the American people deserve nothing less. I yield back.
It's back. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm the last speaker on our side. Are you prepared to close?
I am prepared to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remaining time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this inquiry has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It's about the Republican Party and how radicalized and extreme they've become. They are allergic to truth and transparency. Republicans say this is not about a preordained outcome. It is. They are going to try to impeach President Biden despite the fact that there's no evidence against him at all. Trump sent a violent MAGA mob here to the Capitol to reverse the election results and certify that he won even though he lost. What they couldn't do on January 6th, they want to do with this extreme political stunt. They have contempt for our democracy. They want to finish the job. Republicans say this is all about process, about how the House will proceed. It is not. The truth is this process has already proceeded for 10 months. They've been investigating all year, obtaining tens of thousands of documents, hours and hours of witness testimony. All of it says no wrongdoing by President Biden. Republicans say the White House is stonewalling their inquiry. Again, not true. The White House has provided over 35,000 pages of financial records, dozens of hours of testimony and interviews. Hunter Biden is here to testify today, and Republicans won't let him because they want to do it in secret so they can cherry pick and distort his testimony. This whole inquiry has nothing to do with the integrity of President Biden and everything to do with the lack of integrity in the House and the Republican Party. No amount of evidence could convince Republicans that Joe Biden did nothing wrong because they aren't looking for the truth. They're looking for revenge. And I would just say directly to the American people, Mr. Speaker, that the Republican Party works for Donald Trump, not for you, for Trump. That's why they are pursuing this extreme political stunt. That's why they are doing everything in secret. They want to hide the truth from you because they know their whole impeachment inquiry is a sham, and it will evaporate into thin air when people realize what a pathetic joke it is. This shameful process has no credibility, it has no legitimacy and no integrity. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair and not to perceive the viewing audience. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. And in closing, I urge all my colleagues to support the resolution. We've heard a lot today, heard a lot about Donald Trump. We've had ad infinitum insults to the majority. We've had pejorative language. We've had pounding on the table. And why? Simply because we want to empower 3 committees of Congress to do what the White House asked us to do, that is, have a formal vote on the floor before we fully cooperate. That's all we're doing. If my friends are so confident, again, as one of my colleagues mentioned from the Rules Committee, what are you worried about? It's an investigation. It's open. We hardly talked about what the resolution's about, which is how we're going to proceed. And how are we going to proceed? Almost exactly as my friends proceeded in 2019. Their playbook, their play, their approach. So there's nothing unfair that we're asking to be done. Since September, the House has been engaged in an impeachment inquiry examining whether sufficient grounds exist for the House to exercise constitutional power to impeach the President of the United States. Today's resolution simply formalizes that inquiry and grants the House full authority to enforce its subpoenas. Subpoenas that have been denied as recently as today. You know, my friends have some pretty experienced lawyers on their side. Most of them would tell you it's better to have a deposition before you have a hearing, let alone a trial. All we're trying to do is get the needed people who have been blocked or refused to cooperate to come in and testify under oath before Congress. The resolution follows closely, again, as I said, the procedures established in 2019 and empowers the three committees to continue their existing inquiries. At the end of the inquiry, it provides for the Judiciary Committee, the traditional impeachment committee, to report to the House resolutions, articles of impeachment, or other recommendations. It's deeply unfortunate that we're here, Mr. Speaker, but today's resolution will ensure that the House can fulfill its obligations under the Constitution. And so it is with respect for the Constitution, for this institution, and for this great nation that we proceed. That's all we're trying to do today. We had very little discussion of that, but we ought to entertain that. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind everybody of a few facts. We have millions of dollars from foreign entities that have flowed towards shell companies that we didn't know even existed until the investigations uncovered that. We have whistleblowers, public servants of long standing that have come in and told us their efforts to investigate the either Hunter Biden or the wider schemes have been obstructed. We have lots of things to be concerned about. Our committees need to be empowered with the tools that are required to pursue the truth and then come back and tell us what they found and have a recommendation as to how we could proceed. That's all today is about. So, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays have been requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed.
Okay, so apparently, like I said earlier, there's a lot of other shit in this hearing. So we'll be able to undoubtedly finish and very soon here, actually. So we're gonna go to the vote now. It's the same video. I just skipped ahead to the vote. And the vote takes about 10 minutes and then we're all caught up to where we currently are. So yeah, they put a bunch of other stuff in here, which I apparently didn't listen to last time I was watching it because I kind of just listened to it. But so yeah, we'll get right into this part of it. Here's the actual vote.
Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 918, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 918, resolution directing certain committees to continue their ongoing investigations as part of the existing House of Representatives inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, and for other purposes.
The question is on ordering the previous question. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The question of the current question of the previous question of questioning the question. Utter waste of time, blah, blah, blah. So the liberal media says exactly what you think. Now you have questions. What are your questions? The question is, should we answer the question that chat has that's a question, or just question life's existence as a question? I question everyone's loyalty if they don't hit that thumbs up button and vote in the poll. So, liberal media is exactly what you would think. It's a farce. It's blah blah. I mean, you heard it. So there seems to be a lot of talking points and pushback. Yet again, Congress leaves tonight, and they won't be back till the first of the year. So we won't see any movement whatsoever on this whole impeachment thing until after the new year. Once we do, I will certainly pick it up. Oh, shit. I'll look it up. I didn't even know that. Somebody who's based. So it seems to have been an error or some kind of mistake. We're just watching numbers. Washington Post say 221 GOP support, 212 Democrats oppose, one member of the Democrats did not vote. So it must have been, I assume it would be a did not vote for the one Democrat. So that's how it kind of stacks up. So Bradley Schneider III. I don't know where he's from, but that's kind of how it broke down. So along party lines. Yeah, no base anymore. Pretty much. That's what it seems like. Well, it is all Trump's fault. Well, that's a topic that we'll have to talk about later. I know they keep doing that. YouTube sucks. It's will Biden be impeached? The top answer is yes. The bottom answer is no. This is the question on ordering the previous question. So this is for House Resolution 918. It is for the passage of them to be able to investigate President Biden. So this is directing certain committees to continue their ongoing investigations as part of the existing House of Representatives inquiry, whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Joseph Biden, President of the United States, for other purposes. So that's the bill we're voting on right now. So we're not voting on impeachment. we're voting on House Res 918. So for them to continue their investigations. This resolution does direct specified committees, to continue their ongoing investigations as part of an existing House of Representatives inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist to impeach President Biden. The resolution also adopts H-Res 917, which initiated the inquiry, authorizes initiation of intervention in certain judicial proceedings by the committees, and continues the committee's subpoena authority. Specifically, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Ways and Means, and Judiciary must continue their investigations as set forth in the memorandum issued by the chairs of the committees entitled Impeachment Inquiry, dated September 27, 2023. The resolution also sets forth additional committee authorities for conducting proceedings related to the inquiry. So that is the summary of HRES. And here's the bill. It's literally pages of bullshit. So it's HRES 918. So it's giving them continued powers to be able to investigate. No, so Congress has the sole duty to impeach. So once it's authorized, they can continue.
The yeas are 220 and the nays are 212. The previous question is ordered. Question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered.
Easy.
Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
So I believe that now we're actually, I'll wait till it comes up, but yeah, so now we're actually voting on the actual resolution. So now we're actually voting on HRES 918 to pass it. The previous was the question of the question, questioning the question of the question. So yeah, no worries. So to authorize it, they have the sole power of impeachment, so they can authorize an impeachment inquiry with only the votes of the House. And then they'll do their investigation. They'll vote to impeach. They have the sole duty to impeach or sole power to impeach. And then removal goes to the United States Senate. So the Senate has to vote to remove him after there's an impeachment. Senate is trier of fact, so they act like the court. The House presents to the Senate, and then the Senate removes if there's enough votes. There's not going to be, but impeachment solely belongs to the House. They don't have to have involvement from any other branch to impeach a president. So. So it's 60, I believe it's 60 members in the Senate. So again, impeachment and removal are two different things. So impeachment is simple majority in the House. So they could literally vote to impeach today if they wanted, and it would likely pass if we're being honest. Hang on. I can't type and talk. We know this. Let's see. 2/3. So yeah, 60, 67, 66, 67, somewhere in that. But to impeach him, it's a simple majority, and it can be done. Impeachment is in the House. Removal is the trial in the Senate. So 2/3 of the Senate, simple majority in the House can impeach. 2/3 of the Senate for removal. Once the articles of impeachment are voted on and passed, they act as a court. The Senate acts as a court, and the representatives, the impeachment managers, present their evidence to the Senate, and then the Senate decides whether or not to impeach based on that, or to remove based on that. So no, impeachment can happen with the simple majority. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, for removal, it's 67 senators, 2/3. I thought it went down to 60, but exactly. And unless I have a theory that the Democrats are going to try and play games, and maybe throw somebody up there that they'd like more. But we'll see. I think it's a dangerous spot to be in, because you could essentially help the Democrats get rid of Biden, who's an absolute liability, if it's done incorrectly. A guy that can't stand, let alone stand on principle. Hey, Alexander. So again, this is the actual vote on HRES 918. Go vote, you assholes. Go vote, you assholes.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
So now there's a motion to reconsider what
Pursuant to
they just
Clause
voted
8
for.
of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, to suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 927, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
House Resolution 927, resolution condemning anti-Semitism on university campuses and the testimony of university presidents in the House Committee on Education and the Workforce.
The question
Since
is,
we're already
will the
here,
House
we should
suspend the
probably
rules
see
and
how this
agree to the
votes.
resolution? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Because I didn't see this one earlier. So that's it. The impeachment inquiry has been authorized. This is more curiosity at this point, if you want to stick around. But the impeachment inquiry has been authorized. Like I said, there's no scheduled hearings yet. Congress is going home right now. They're headed back to their districts to enjoy their families for the holiday, which many of us can't do. But as soon as the new year rolls around and there are hearings, I will cover each and every one right now, or right here, as they're happening, because obviously this is a historic thing. I think it's going to continue to be overplayed in future administrations, but anytime when you have a majority in a different party, I think you're going to see this kind of behavior. And it's further bastardization of our Constitution and our democracy, which was once a republic, but is no more. And that kind of sucks. I'm guessing majority vote in favor and like 30 Dems vote against it. Oh, it looks like a lot of Dems are voting against it. So I mean, we'll see what comes of this. It could be. Could they find something compelling enough to break apart Democrats? I don't think so. I think we're too deeply embedded in our tribalism to be able to see anything but our own side, which you could see by the way people were talking, and how things just didn't line up. Like how you can be so damn delusional. It has to be intentional. They can't believe what the hell they're saying. I just can't accept that they can believe what they're saying. There's no way. There's no way. No way that they can believe that he's a good and honorable man that's never done anything wrong. Like that's just unrealistic. We know that's not true. Or that I don't know. So there's so much bending of reality that it almost seems like there's two different ones. Like we live in a simulation. Well, it looks like the Republicans are more than happy to take more rights away. They have to believe it. If they don't, they'll be excommunicated from the Democratic Party. I've always said that's the one thing that the Democrats are good at is they stick together like glue. Like on the big things, there's no movement. They are a cult. They are one individual. One base Republican. $68 seconds. What is it? 2-8. Well, there's one missing, so. Oh, 2-8. I didn't read the other one. So 282. So it will pass. So the censoring anti-Semitic speech on college campuses passed. I know we're all shocked. It's Massey. Good. And more people should, because just because it's the group that you like doesn't mean that you get to rip apart my First Amendment. I mean, both sides are hell-bent on removing as many rights as they possibly can. They just placate and pit each other against each other, make it look like they're the good guys, and we're never going to do anything wrong, and then there's more of your rights gone. So who would have thought that the Republicans were the anti-First Amendment party? There isn't a party that serves the people anymore. It's fucking uniparty. It's 100% uniparty. That's all that matters to them. It's power and control. It's not about us. It's about their power and control. Which is why we need a viable third party to break up the uniparty. Like an actual viable third party, not one that's going to hold seats and do something. God, is this going to be one of those 45-minute, 5-minute votes? Since they obviously don't have watches and can't tell time. They need more from their fucking donors so they can buy a Rolex. So they can tell time so they can vote on time.
Does anyone wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 303, the nays are 126, 3 recorded as present. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
That is a lot of votes.
Pursuant to Section 6 of House Resolution 918, House Resolution 917 is considered as adopted.
And I think that's it. So maybe let's make sure. Yeah, some chick just sat in a chair. So that's gonna be it. As far as the authorization of the inquiry. I wanted to read Biden's response to it that he totally wrote 100%. Why would anybody think that he didn't write it? That would be ridiculous and un-American and Swalwellian. But we'll read that and then we'll get the hell out of here. Statement from President Joe Biden on baseless House Republican impeachment stunt. I didn't see who it was. Yeah, right. Can she write? The American people need their leaders in Congress to take action on important priorities for the nation and the world. On Tuesday, I met with the president of Ukraine, who has dirt on me, who is leading his people in the battle for freedom against Russian aggression. He came to America to ask us for help. Yet, Republicans in Congress won't act to help for the 384th fucking time. I've taken creative liberties with this. Does it say momo? No. The people of Israel are in a battle against terrorists, and they're wanting our help. Yet Republicans in Congress won't act to help. We have to address the situation on our southern border, and I am determined to try and fix this problem. The problem. We need funding to strengthen our border security, but Republicans in Congress won't act to help. That sounds like some bullshit. We need to continue our progress on the economy and make sure inflation keeps going down and job growth keeps going up. This means avoiding self-inflicted economic crises like a government shutdown, which Republicans in Congress are driving us towards in just a few weeks because they won't act now to fund the government and critical priorities to make life better for the American people. There's a lot of work to be done, but after wasting weeks trying to find a new Speaker of the House and having to expel their own members, Republicans in Congress are leaving for a month without doing anything to address these pressing challenges. You're all leaving for a month. I wake up every day focused on the issues facing the American people, real issues that impact their lives and the strength and security of our country and the world. Unfortunately, House Republicans are not joining me. Instead of doing anything to help make Americans' lives better, they're focused on attacking me with lies. Instead of doing their job on the urgent work that needs to be done, they're choosing to waste their baseless. Even Republicans in Congress admit is not supported by the facts. The American people deserve better. I know what I'm going to remain focused on. I would invite Republicans in Congress to join me. And sniffing kids. Like I said, I'm a poor reader and I added some of my own creative liberties, but it's basically what I said. I'm applying for a congressional job, if you can't tell. Yeah. All right, I'll go through some. Exactly. Free speech is free speech. Rude, racist, horrible, anti-Semitic. Doesn't matter. Should be. Should be. And you should be able to say from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free or whatever the fuck it is. Like I don't really care. Like the ridiculousness of blocking random shit is starting to get a little old. But as far as saying whatever the hell you want, I don't give a fuck. Say whatever you want. I do. It's beautiful. Oh, don't even get me started there. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Hunter wrote it on a binge. He might actually be. There's a report allegedly that he bought a house in Florida for $20 million today. It had a bunch of fact checks, but there's pretty compelling evidence. But make up your own mind. Could be, absolutely could be. Yep. Oh, he 100% represents foreign interest. I don't even think you can attempt to hide that, but that's very true. Maybe they'll call Zelensky in. Maybe they subpoena Zelensky. Yeah, but we don't agree. Stop sending my money elsewhere. Like I'm tired of it. Maybe. Exactly. Right. Well, they take one little line from a big sound clip that they got and blah blah blah. Basically. Exactly. Zelensky allegedly bought a $20 million house in Florida. Yeah. Yep. That's true. Just geotag it so you have to be in the country and just let it go. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to actually close the poll today because I wrote it somewhat coherently. Will Joe Biden be impeached? 54% say yes. 46% say no. Why did you change to 53? Dumbass. Fucking YouTube. That's, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And again, it's been debunked, supposedly in fact check about 7 million times, but there's some pretty compelling evidence that it was indeed accurate. So make up your own mind, but that's what I heard. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that's going to be it for what we have so far. Like I said, the impeachment proceedings will actually take place at the start of the year, probably the second or third week in January is how it's looking. Congress is out of session for at least the rest of the year. They've already went home. So we won't get anything additional. We'll get the rhetoric back and forth, but we won't get any additional movement, any hearings, anything like that until after the first of the year. We might hear some subpoena information or subpoena news if there's enough to put together. Then obviously I'll do a show and kind of put it together. If not, we'll revisit it once we get to closer to an actual impeachment hearing. But I'm so glad that was not the whole 9 hours. Like I said, I kind of listened to it in the background and don't always pay attention 100%. So it was good. So catch us tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time for News Roundup. We have a bunch of shit that caught on fire. Another couple of houses that blew up. It should be a fun one. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Please hit that like on your way out and subscribe if you're new here. That'll be it. Take care, y'all.